Hello and welcome to the Syrinx 365 quarterly product review for 2025 Q1. Thanks for joining me as we go through some of the items and features that we've been working on during the last sort of quarter, 3 months or so. So let's get started. So one of the first things that I want to talk about, probably because it's got the most to demo and I think it'll have a good impact for sort of users using the system, is the mobile work item search. So in V4 or in 365 previously, you can see the mobile work items. You've got the mobile work, the work schedule that's there. It's lacking in filtering, which then just makes it trickier to find what you're looking for. So one of the things we've done recently is we've pulled the mobile work schedule into 365 as a sort of new and shiny search screen. So much like the other search screens that you've got within Syrinx, you've got sort of that extra power and you can use page views and it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for. So if we make a start, ultimately, we need to find it. So to begin with, it is within the staff item from the left-hand menu, and then we've got search and mobile work schedule. So as we come in here, you can see I've defaulted straight into driver jobs, which I'll touch on shortly. But ultimately, first time you come in here, you are going to get the system view. So this is everything. Everything from cancelled, completed, whether it be related to driver, workshop, misc jobs, whatever it might be. So there's a couple of key things in here. Again, you've got all the functionality that you would typically want within the Syrinx 365 searches. So you can move these columns around, you can add the filters, etc. But the things that make this helpful and really useful is that you've got your group. So you ultimately know whether it's come from the workshop app, the driver app, whether it's come from the operator app, or if it's just a misc job. But you've also got the type. So if it's a driver, if it's a job that's come from the driver app, we can see that, okay, well, this was a loading job for a delivery. We could see that it was a delivery itself, whether it's a collection or an exchange. You can see all of that information. And so if we pair that with existing functionality that we've already got in Syrinx search screens to be able to create page views, that's where the power lies, where you can make it easier to find exactly what you're looking for. So if, for example, you are only interested in driver-related jobs, then you can see here, I've already created this filter previously. I'm interested in essentially jobs that are not cancelled to begin with, but obviously you can make these whatever you want. You can only see completed and so on. So I'm interested in basically any jobs that aren't cancelled, and I'm interested in driver jobs. So I see all jobs in here that are specifically driver app jobs. You could take that a step further if you wanted to and say, I want to see driver jobs as well as the vehicle checks. I haven't done that on here as one page view, but that's something else that you could build out. But likewise, you can then make specific delivery jobs. So if you're not interested on the loading jobs or you're not interested in collections or exchanges, just for example, you can have a specific view that, again, you can default that. By default, you can just come into it and you can just hit the little green circle next to it. That will then become your default. And you can then see what you need to see straight away. And again, you can change the filters. You can move all of these columns around so that they are perfect for what you need. And as I touched on before, you can make them app related, so operator jobs. You can make them vehicle checks and defects. That's another one that might be useful. But you can just break it out. You can break out into everything that you might want to see. So that is the new mobile work schedule. As I say, it's utilizing that core functionality of Syrinx in terms of the searching and being able to find the data as and when you need it. So moving on to the next one. Essentially, this is the ability to add or override the department code on a stock purchase order. So as I say, it's a small one, but for those people that would utilize this, then it's one that sort of could help you. So one of the things that we had previously was that as you create your stock purchase order, it will default in a department code, which you couldn't change. And so now what we've allowed is when you enter a stock purchase order, Or if you want to go and amend an existing stock purchase order that's unconfirmed, then we can go onto the nominal codes tab, and we can now set or change that accounts department code. So again, it just gives you that little bit more flexibility. It means that you're not necessarily passing something through to your accounting solution that you then need to go and manually journal. You can correct things in Syrinx before they then get transferred across. So as I say, that's just a small one, but as I say, for those people that's relevant to, that's an impactful one. So the next thing that I'm going to talk you through is alternative terms. So again, this is something that not everybody uses currently. There's probably a fairly small portion of people that use it, but for those people that do use it, it is again one of those things that you rely on. So previously, Syrinx 365 didn't support alternate terms. So we added that functionality in previously. And so what we've done this quarter is we've essentially just created that initial window that allows you to enter in your alternative terms. So for those that aren't familiar, alternative terms is essentially saying that I want to take this particular word that Syrinx already says. I'm just going to use higher because you see higher throughout the system. Obviously, it's a higher system primarily. So if you see higher in the system and we say that I don't want it to say higher anymore, I want it to say rent, then we can set that up, and then everything that we go into going forward will then say rent rather than off hire. So that's just a brief bit of what it's for. So if we come back to Syrinx, we are going to go to the config program, and we are going to go into administration. And then within administration, we have alternative terms here. So you can see there's nothing in there now, but I'm going to go and add in. So anywhere I see the word hire, I want to put in my new alternative term of rent. So we're going to save that. We've got my little notification to say that that's saved. I'm just going to refresh the app so it pulls through any changes. And straight off the bat, we can see here on the side, this would normally be hire, and it's now showing rent. And then likewise, if we go into that, then you've got enter a rent contract rather than enter a hire contract. Instead of off hires, you've got off rent here, and so on. You get the idea. So as you work your way through the system, it will then start showing you rent rather than hire. And there's lots of different things you can use it for. It doesn't have to be something quite so simple as that. As you go through sort of different screens, if you're inside a contract, then again that wording will apply as you navigate around. And so I'm just going to go and remove that just for just for demo purposes, but also I don't want to use the word rent all the time as well. So we can come back in here, we can delete that out of here, save that, and then once we then refresh our app, we can then see that I've got hire back as well. So that is that one. Again, not a huge piece of functionality, but for those people who use it, that can be quite an important one because depending on what words it is that you're changing, the fields can have very sort of different meanings, different uses. And yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can use that for different things. So it's a fairly important one for those that do use it. So moving on to the last demo that I'm going to do, I've got a few more things to talk through, but in terms of a demo, this is the last one that I'm going to run through. So this is all around damage note and the photos. So currently within Syrinx, you can take your damage note, and I'll go through this way where you can see it as well. But currently you have a limit. So if you're creating a damage note, you can have 3 photos if they're essentially in line on that first page of the document, or alternatively, if you are going to put them onto the second page, it would only let you do 2 photos. And as we've sort of got feedback from different people on the system, this was one of the areas that that people struggle with. And part of the reason for that is if you're saying to one of your customers that actually, like, we can see that you've damaged this piece of equipment, we're going to be charging you for this. They say, well, I want more proof than this. You've got 3 photos here that might be sort of generic photos of the whole piece of equipment, as opposed to honed in on the detail, just for example. And so we often get sort of asked for this to be increased because 2 or 3 photos just isn't enough. You might want 4 photos of the outside of the whole piece of equipment, and then zoomed in photos on particular areas that are damaged. And so 2 and 3 just didn't cut it, basically. So if we come down here, we're going to create we're just going to create a quick damage note. And as we go through this process, so I'm coming into here and I've uploaded my photos to the computer or to the server, and it says, okay, here are the photos that I've found in this particular folder. And like I say, previously you could only select 2 or 3. What we can do here, we can go and say, okay, well, I want this one to be used. These are just dummy photos, obviously, of things that I've taken around my desk. But the idea obviously stands. So I've got 5 here as an example, just for ease. Otherwise, you'd have to watch me going and clicking through all of these. But we've tested it up to, I think, 25 or 30. Theoretically, the limit is 99. We haven't tested it up that high. But either way, even at sort of the 25, 30, that's a heck of a lot more than the 2 or 3 that you can use right now. And so hopefully, as I say, this will be a lot more useful for you. So we've come into here, we've said, okay, for this particular damage note that we're going to raise, these are the 5 photos that I want to use. And so we hit OK on that. And you'll see here. So by default, it says, okay, well, if you want them on that first page, we can still only show you 3, because that's the limitation of the format of getting everything onto the one page. You can have 3 slightly smaller photos. You can still have your writing at the bottom and everything like that. It still formats nicely. However, if you want to use all of your photos, you can then say, I want to show them photos on the 2nd and 3rd and 4th subsequent pages. And then you can see, obviously, we've got back our 5 photos that we want to use. So that's perfect. And then from there, we can go and print. We can go and print our notification letter. And as that prints, I will pull you across the screen. As that then prints, you can see, obviously, we don't have anything on the first page. But then as we go to the next page, you can see that we've then got our different pictures. And so we can go to the last page, and then we should see our final 2 on there. So we've got all 5 photos, as opposed to just the 2 or 3 that we saw previously. So that is the end of the items that I wanted to demo for you. But a few more things that, as I say, that I just wanted to talk through. There's lots more that we've been working on. These are just some of the ones that we've been asked by customers to be able to develop, or that as we've spoken to people, that these are sort of pain points and things like that. So that's just why I'm highlighting some of these ones. So moving on, again, just a quick one. So for those people that are on Syrinx 365 and have been using it for a little while, you'll know that the off-hire process is the same. However, the way that you manage collections is very different in 365. And so one of the things that we've heard is that as you then raise an off-hire, if you're raising a full off-hire, not a partial off-hire, then you want to add all of those items to a collection. So rather than having to go into the collection and then add the items, you want them to automatically be added. So the first thing we've done is we've added that to the menu option. So if you go into the off-hire, the full off-hire menu option, then it will pull through all of those items onto a collection. And then from there, we can then potentially look at doing that in other areas if you're going through off-hire in a contract, for example. But for right now, that functionality is within that menu option. Another one is quite a big one, is speedier access to your data. So ultimately, the way that sort of Syrinx 365 used to work was you open up Syrinx 365, and obviously there are some screens that are more familiar to you if you're a V4 user, or if you're not a previously V4 user, they just look a bit older. Essentially, what happened in the background was, as you went to go and open up your contract, it would then say, hey, we've got to go and open up Microsoft Access in the background for you. And there was a delay, and it was a horrible delay. And so what we've done is we've basically set it up so that as soon as you log into Syrinx 365, it says, hey, go and open up Microsoft Access so that it's ready for you. And so by that point, as you've navigated to your search for contract and you've then clicked on your contract, Microsoft Access has already opened up in the background. And at that point in time, you then just get your contract. It's not a long wait that you've got to wait whilst Microsoft Access needs to start and prepare itself and things like that. So it just makes that process a lot smoother from the start. And the same thing also happens in config. Again, if you're used to V4, then you had config as a separate program. But within 365, it's part of the core 365 system, and you just have your toggle switch in your right-hand user option menu. And so as you hit that toggle switch, that's when it goes and starts loading up or preloading Microsoft Access for you as well, so that as you then navigate through the menu options, and by the time you click on something to open up a screen, it's already there for you, it's already loaded, and so it just makes everything a lot quicker. And so we've had quite a lot of good feedback about that already in comparison to sort of how it was previously. So that's a good thing to be able to tell you, and hopefully you'll all see that straight away as soon as you use it. So next one, purchase invoice import tools, partial quantities. And so this essentially means that you don't have to just do a full purchase invoice in the first place. Perhaps your invoice doesn't cover the full quantity. If you're expecting 100 of a particular order and you get 50 come in, then what it would do is that previously it would say, hey, you need to have the whole 100 of these. Whereas now you can say, hey, I've got 50 of these on this order, and then you can then come and then push another invoice through for another 50 at a later date. And it just gives you that bit more flexibility for sort of real world scenarios, real world usage, and it just makes it a lot easier. Another item, this one doesn't really affect you too much, but it's just a notable piece of development that we've done. And so essentially, where you had various settings and pieces of information stored within your user options, what happened before was that was stored in your Windows registry. And that's fine. We used to run into sort of occasional problems as people didn't have permission to write to the registry. And then we also sort of ran into challenges as we pushed out Syrinx Cloud as well. So what we've done is we've put quite a lot of effort into essentially migrating all of that into the Syrinx database. So you've just got more of that stored there. And then again, it's there, it's persistent. There's no sort of permission issues writing to the registry. And so it just makes everything a lot easier, a lot smoother, and just a lot more reliable. Nobody has to sort of change the permissions to access the registry or anything like that. The last one I want to talk about in terms of what we've done this quarter is we've started trying to shore up POR pay, particularly in this case the transaction status. So what we found was that as somebody might have had a card declined, there would be a relatively generic error message, and nobody had a clue why. You can assume they didn't have enough funds, or you could assume that it was something was wrong. You don't necessarily know. And so one of the things that we're now getting back from Stripe, as it is with POR Pay, Stripe are now able to send us a transaction status object. And so that basically means that we've then done some development work our side, so that if you have that scenario, so you have a user trying to take a payment from a customer, that customer's card is declined. So instead of previously just getting your card is declined, this card has been declined, you'll receive a more helpful message, including something a little more along the lines of the card was declined, your card has insufficient funds, or something like that. And just so it means that it's a lot more usable, it's a lot more informative, and it just means that you know what's going on with that. So, as I say, they are the pieces that I just wanted to talk you through that we've been working on through Q1. Some things that you can look forward to updates on next time in the next quarter for Q2 is emails. So we've heard a lot of feedback around emailing, particularly for our cloud customers. So we've got enhancements to that, which include and are not limited to cloud customers, but they were the ones who felt most of the challenge there. Is including OAuth, so you'll be able to use OAuth to connect to your SMTP server rather than using sort of app passwords as we used previously. We'll be improving the process for its signatures. Again, if you're using an Outlook plugin, that's fine. It doesn't really It doesn't really mean quite so much to you. If you're not using the Outlook plugin, then this will really enhance and make it a lot easier to get a good looking signature, rather than just using sort of a plain text template file. You'll be able to use something a lot better. It will give you a much more professional finish. And so yeah, that's a big one. That's a big piece for emailing, that we're looking forward to. And then the last one is being able to sort of preview and amend an email, be able to attach a spreadsheet to an email that you're sending from Syrinx. Things that, again, you could do with the Outlook plugin, whereas if you're in cloud, you don't have the Outlook plugin. You don't have Outlook installed there. And so this is all just sort of bringing back those pieces that you might have been able to do previously and just making that user experience a lot better. Next one, PRPay reconciliation. We know that PRPay reconciliation is a challenge, and so we're working on that process. And then the last one that I just want to talk about is payment on account. So that's a big thing. Obviously, right now you can only take payments for cash customers, and so this is something that we'll be working on through Q2, is being able to take payment for account customers. There are some other things as well, but they're the highlights that we're looking to do for Q2. So I look forward to talking to you next quarter, and thank you for listening.